First of all, Mr. Ambassador, thanks for your time.
Welcome.
Mr. Ambassador, recently Afghanistan and India signed a strategic partnership agreement. How do you see that India, how can India help the Afghan army and also to train the Afghan army in other area of cooperations?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for this interview, and let me also convey my greetings to your audience through you. You're right, India and Afghanistan signed a very historic strategic partnership agreement during President Karzai's visit to India in October, actually October 4 this year. The partnership agreement is comprehensive, and in some ways it summarizes, it encapsulates the sort of multifaceted nature of our relationship and the comprehensive nature of our relationship as well. The agreement covers political consultations and cooperation. It covers trade, economic investment, and regional economic cooperation, which is a very important component. It covers capacity building in general, which includes education, training in civil matters. It includes a clause on training and so on in the security sphere. And of course, it also talks about cooperation in the whole area of civil society that covers media, parliament, women, youth, sports, academic, intellectual, literary, even religious spheres. So it's really a comprehensive agreement. Now, I think we should put the security clause in context. The security clause is one clause in a range of areas in this agreement. And it is arguable which is more strategic. For me, I could actually consider, say, something like sports, which is part of this agreement, also of a strategic value. But President Karzai himself highlighted the role of education. Now, naturally, as part of this, it would be abnormal if Afghanistan, at a time when it is going through a period of insecurity, when it is trying to build up its national security forces, the ANA and the ANP, and when the international community is slightly definitely reducing its combat role in Afghanistan, looking at 2014 and beyond, it would be unnatural that there should not be a clause in such a comprehensive relationship. There should not be a clause on security as well. What we see our cooperation in this area as oriented towards is the legitimate security needs of Afghanistan. Afghanistan has a right to look after its own security.
Mr. Ambassador, that strategic partnership triggered anger in Pakistan, and they see these things suspicious. Did you think their concern is legitimate?
I think I would correct that. I mean, if you really hear the comments of the Pakistani government, they took it in its stride. They said, well, this is a matter between India and Pakistan, and they did not see it necessarily as anti-Pakistan. In fact, I don't think we have any official statement of the Pakistani government.
But behind the closed doors, they all mentioned that the President Karzai signed that agreement with India, and they think this is something against Pakistan.
Right. But, I don't, okay, there are, of course, elements. We have seen articles also in the media which sort of project this in a kind of anti-Pakistani view. But that is not the view with which we entered the agreement, and that is not the view that we understand that Afghanistan entered this agreement with. In fact, right at the top of the agreement, there is a paragraph which says that this is not directed at any third party at all. And I think I should clarify, that when we are doing this, we are firstly thinking about Afghanistan and India. We are seeing it in terms of this agreement as for Afghanistan and for our bilateral relations. All other countries, whoever they may be, are secondary to this. We go by what Afghanistan wants and what we can do. So from our side, at least, we are very clear that this is not aimed at any third country, and I think that's also from the Afghan side. And I frankly have not seen any official Pakistani statement that also interprets this as anti-Pakistani. So for those sort of sections of the Pakistani population, unofficial sections, which may have taken it like this, my message, my advice would be that if you read the entire strategic partnership agreement, you will find that it is basically much more civil oriented. In fact, I would say 90% is civil. maybe 95% is civil oriented, and the remaining 5% is, political and security and those areas. And even these are transparent, they are open. Anyone can have a look at it. These are legitimate areas of cooperation between independent nation states.
Mr. Ambassador, some people arguing that Afghanistan has been victim of the proxy war between India and in Pakistan. What's your thought on this?
Oh, I think this is really a serious misunderstanding. Mr. Kakar, in my stay here, when I meet Afghan people, most ordinary Afghan people don't look at it like this. There are a few commentators, mostly in the West, and maybe a few people in the intelligentsia here who may have seen it like this. But I think that's a really wrong characterization. I can't speak for how Pakistan sees it. This is not my job. But as far as we see it, there is no war and there is nothing proxy about our relationship with Afghanistan. And why is it no war? Because from our side, our contribution to Afghanistan is entirely in the area of reconstruction and humanitarian assistance. How can you compare, let's say, destabilization or terrorism with construction and reconstruction? So I think that entire phrase is peculiarly, it's attractive to some people who like to think in terms of oppositional relations. But it's certainly not what the Afghan people feel.
So you think, Mr. Ambassador, it's a type of Western propaganda against these two countries?
No, I see propaganda is a very strong word. Propaganda is a kind of very intentional, motivated message. I think it's just it's a kind of wrong perception and wrong interpretation based presumably on a kind of view and maybe some historical facts of the past 60 years. That fact is that we've had conflicts with Pakistan, and maybe extrapolating from that, they have created this picture that Afghanistan is a theater of rivalry between India and Afghanistan. Now, I can't speak for Pakistan, but certainly as far as India is concerned, we are not looking at Afghanistan in terms of regional rivalries.
Yes. Mr. Ambassador, sometimes Pakistan, time to time, there is the issue of Indian consulates, especially on Jalalabad and in Kandahar, and they see these consulates as areas which they blame India that they want to help insurgency in Balochistan. So, what do you think?
I think what I think probably matters much less than what the Afghan people think. Our consulates there are doing legitimate consular activities. We have people traveling from these regions to India. We issue visas. In some places, we have medical missions. The consulates provide administrative support for the medical missions. We have normal diplomats, like any other country has for their consulates. If you're talking about Indian consulates and other countries have consulates in the same places that we have consulates. So if they have consulates, what should be peculiarly illegitimate about our consulates? They promote trade. Right now, we are hoping that from Mazar, we have our India International Trade Fair. We are hoping a delegation of business people on their own, will visit India to participate in the trade fair. And frankly, we would like this to be done from Kandahar, from Jalalabad, from Herat. And these are the only 4 consulates that we have, contrary to some rumors or some propaganda. In this case, we can say propaganda about it. So this is absolutely, why does a country have an embassy and consulates? There are many countries that have an embassy in India and have consulates in Bangalore, in Chennai, in Kolkata, in Mumbai. Why do they do that? They do that to be able to reach out to the people of that area, to make friends, to build relationships, to help each other. We help the people of that area, and maybe they help us in terms of strengthening our overall relations. But more important than anything of all this is that this is done jointly. I mean, this is done, it's not something that we have imposed on Afghanistan. It is something that has been welcomed by the government of Afghanistan. So I don't see how anyone can have any objection unless they feel that they must control Afghanistan's external relations. I don't see
Mr. Ambassador, most of the time, some Pakistanis, they accuse India that they are trying to promote terrorism and Balochistan, especially with the Baloch Liberation Army, and time to time they raise these issues in media as well. How do you see? Did you think why they have that much concern about the India-Afghanistan relation?
See, again, this is something that is periodically heard, but no one has ever produced any proof about this. It's very easy to make statements like this. Really, when you make statements like this, the onus and burden is on whoever is making the statement to show some evidence about it. I can easily tarnish you by saying anything bad about you. But I think that's not fair dealing. Why do they do this? One can assume, to give the benefit of doubt, it may be that there is a paranoia, but I'm just speculating. Maybe that's just a benefit of doubt. Maybe it is deliberate, theatrics or drama, just to create an impression that it becomes, it provides a justification for what some elements may be wanting to do in Afghanistan by trying to say that we are doing something using Afghanistan against Pakistan, against Balochistan. That is not at all the case.
Mr. Ambassador, I want to ask you this question because most of Afghan, they think that about Pakistan, that they think that they are treating Afghanistan as a backyard, and sometimes the international community raises this issue that Pakistan is atomic power, and so Afghans have a legitimate question. They ask this: if Pakistan is a big country, atomic power, have they the right to oppose whatever they want on Afghanistan? Just I want to know your opinion on this.
Really, actually, this is beyond my jurisdiction. I'm ambassador to Afghanistan. I wouldn't like to comment on something that is really, frankly, hypothetical. But I can understand the people's natural concerns about this.
Mr. Ambassador, since India is the world's largest democracy and now it's a growing economy as well, how do you see the relationship between Afghanistan and India and the benefit of the Afghan people to have a great relation with India, and how India, in which area, can help Afghanistan?
I think this is a very good question. I'm glad that we have come back to India-Afghanistan relations rather than third countries. Look at it simply like this. India is a 1.2 billion market. India is a 3 or 4 trillion economy. It is growing at 8 to 9%, or let's say 7 to 8 to 9%. India can offer its market as a market for Afghanistan's products. India has the economic power now to be able to invest in Afghanistan. India has the institutions that Afghanistan can draw from our experience in developing its own institutions here, economic institutions, political institutions, even security institutions. In doing so, India has also a great potential in terms of all kinds of capacity building, whether it is education or training. So India, just by virtue of its size, firstly, and secondly by its proximity. There are other countries also which are even larger and maybe which can give more, but they may not be so close. And thirdly, I would say, there are historical linkages. If you look at this entire region between the Hindu Kush to the Gangetic Valley, essentially the topography is a slope towards the Ganges Valley. And this is the way history, this is the way trade, this is the way economic relations, this is the way, as I said, history has flowed. It has flowed downwards from the Hindu Kush towards the plains of India. So this is a kind of natural corridor for Afghanistan, for its products, for its traders. Yes, it's one part of the Silk Road. One part of the Silk Road, because the Silk Road connects to Central Asia, it connects to West Asia, it connects to China. But you're right, we see that this whole area could be an area of co-prosperity. And this is the vision our Prime Minister has always been projecting, that,
Mr. Ambassador, how open India is to help Afghanistan in a different sectors like education, the IT sector, which India have a great progress.
I would say India's, the Indians have a certain feeling for Afghanistan and for the people of Afghanistan, that there is no area that India is not willing to share with the Afghan people open-heartedly. I can say that with absolute confidence and honesty. So that includes education, that includes health, that includes economy, that includes, institution building, democracy, whatever you like. It includes every area. But I would say one thing in this area, that there is probably a lot more that we could do that we haven't been able to do because of a specific India specific threat to our presence here. For example, we could encourage our schools, private colleges, vocational schools, vocational training centers to open up institutions here. But they would hesitate to do so. Why? Because, there would be a fear of its people being targeted. So really one of the areas that inhibits us from doing more for Afghanistan, more from our people's side, not from the government side. From the government side, we are totally committed. But insecurity is an understandable inhibition.
Yes, Mr. Ambassador, on issue of trade, most of Afghan businessmen, they think that the difficulty is in Pakistan because if they do not give us the road, so then the Afghan businessmen or they cannot reach to India, they cannot bring their goods to India. So India might have the same problem. So how could you solve these issues, right, with Pakistan?
Well, I think let's put it like this: India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, as well as the international community, is trying to address this problem. I agree with you that trade can be a very major magnet for Afghanistan's prosperity and stabilization. I'll come back to this point, but let's say the signing of the Afghanistan-Pakistan Transit Trade Agreement. Even though it is one direction at this moment, it's a positive development. Lately, you have heard that Pakistan, after 15 or 16 years after we gave them most favored nation treatment, in the last month, we've heard decisions by the Pakistani government to extend most favored nation to India as well. They have also expanded the positive list in some areas. Let us look at this sort of thing as a direction. Perhaps we don't have an ideal situation today, but if we have this vision that we are talking about of regional cooperation, then it is possible that what is not happening today may happen tomorrow. We have seen some positive trends, and we only hope that this is some positive signs. We only hope that this can become a trend. We hope to liberalize trade between India and Pakistan. If we liberalize trade between India and Pakistan, we come one step closer towards transit trade with Afghanistan. These are things that we are discussing. So there is some positive.
Mr. Ambassador, in a recent SARC conference, the media described the meeting between Prime Minister Manmohan Singh in Pakistani Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani as a good step towards to ease the relationship or to step forward to establish a good relationship between the Pakistan and India. How much it will impact I want to understand the issue of the relation between these three countries, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and India.
Well, specifically right now, I think this is, the Prime Minister proposed, that we should start a new chapter in our relations. And by all accounts, Prime Minister Gilani also reciprocated that desire. So I think this is a very positive development. And I think if India-Pakistan relations do improve, they will have an impact on the entire region. Because precisely, all those questions that we talk about, that you asked about, competition, proxy, hopefully this vocabulary will start, getting discredited. And that is what we would like to work for. Back on the question of trade, I would just also like to say that, look, there are objective reasons why this should happen. Now, as part of our future strategy towards Afghanistan, and as part of the Strategic Partnership Agreement, we are trying to elevate our relationship with Afghanistan. One of the areas where we are trying to do that is investment. Now, if we invest in Afghanistan, we will require regional cooperation. This is not just a wish. This will become an economic necessity that we will require regional cooperation with all countries of the region, including Pakistan. If Pakistan shares this vision with us, then Pakistan stands to benefit from the same thing. For example, we could use Pakistan for transit of whatever investments we do in, let's say, in the mining sector. So whatever investments we do could benefit Pakistan because we would require transit through Pakistan. Pakistan would collect transit fees quite naturally, just as we are planning to do with the Tapi gas pipeline. But in addition to just transit, then this will become part of an area of economic activity relations. It will not just be ore. There could be other products that come and go. If we set up something in Afghanistan, maybe we will source some of our material, or whether it's raw material or machinery, from neighboring countries. Neighboring countries could include Pakistan. So, I think the idea here is to try to get away from a kind of zero-sum game, to look at opportunities in Afghanistan in terms of a win-win situation. And I would say that there is an additional reason for doing this. People, when they're looking at Afghanistan to 2014 and beyond, the narrative that we are hearing right now is still a narrative of growing insecurity. There's worry. What will happen when the international forces leave Afghanistan, or at least when they leave a combat role? I think we also need to create a narrative of opportunity. And that is where investments come in, because that creates a narrative of investment, revenue generation, employment, industry, large industry, smaller industry that comes up in the wake of a large industry. So this is the vision that we have of Afghanistan when we think of investment. And we do not believe that it should only be India. In fact, we would like the international community to invest in Afghanistan so that the international community continues to have a stake in Afghanistan and also contributes to the prosperity of Afghanistan. Because this will create a counter narrative to the narrative of victimhood and extremism and terrorism. It will give opportunities. People who are going into terrorism today will be tempted to go into productive opportunities, education, skills, training, better jobs, and really progress.
Yes, Mr. Ambassador, how do you see the role of SARC to promote a good relation between the regional countries, or regional cooperation between the India?
Thank you. Again, that's a very good question. Once again, I would say, SARC combines the market of India with the other major markets of the region, and they include Pakistan and Bangladesh. So together, you're talking about a market of 1.5 billion, right? Now, we are already talking about SAFTA, that's the South Asia Free Trade Agreement. India has already, as it is, I think, taken a number of trade initiatives to reduce tariffs on products of the least developing countries in the region. That includes...
So Afghanistan is also included?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I think we are down to the sort of negative list is down to about 5 or 6%, and we are working to even reducing that. The whole idea of SAFTA, which means that it's not just the Indian market, the entire South Asian market. And I think along with that will come a lot of other things. I mean, it's not just trade, it'll be economic cooperation. And, the earlier vision that I spelt out to you, it'll be not just India. We'll see that anybody in the South Asian region who can contribute to this will contribute.
Mr. Ambassador, as you mentioned, the post-2014 Afghanistan, because this is really the major concern of the Afghan people, because most people think that when the international troops leave Afghanistan, so that Afghanistan will again face insurgency or major war or civil war in Afghanistan. So how do you see that? Is it possible, or you think still Afghanistan can make a progress or control that?
I think those dangers are there, and we should be aware of it, and we should work against it. It is not at all inevitable. It is something that can be contained, and it is something that can be countered as well. And how can we counter that? Many things. I think it's very important that we contribute to the Afghan National Security Forces so that they are capable of providing security to the Afghan people. I think it's important that the international community contributes to a kind of, the governance deficit. After all, for 30 years of foreign intervention, civil war, Taliban rule, the structures of the state and administration have been shattered. And it takes time to reconstruct, rebuild them, even train your administrators, even design the system of administration. Third, development. There is a huge development deficit. Afghanistan will need development assistance to be able to provide the development that is necessary so that the state is seen as something that is benefiting the people. Fourth, there is an investment deficit. International community should invest. Now, if we do all these things, we can create a counter-narrative. Personally, I feel that the period of transition is too short. It should have been much longer. But even if it's too short, we cannot afford to think negatively and abandon Afghanistan. Because if you mentally abandon Afghanistan, then Afghanistan will go the way you predicted. But if you decide to invest in the opposite, which is decide to invest in security and stability and development and investment and governance, then you at least create an alternative opportunity. And ideally, this should be done with the help of everyone.
Yeah. Mr. Ambassador, do you think that the international community right now is willing to help Afghanistan post-2014?
I believe so. And I believe so, and there is no reason to disbelieve the statements and the declarations of the international community. We should be aware of two things. One is that the international community felt that with 9/11 and with terrorism in general, the international community its security was affected. And at that point of time, they felt that the center of the Al-Qaeda was in this area. So I think in their own interest and in the interest of their own security, they cannot afford this time to abandon Afghanistan totally, as they did after the Soviet withdrawal in the late 80s. This is one reason. They know that if they do that, they will once again create a vacuum, and that vacuum will either be filled in by a civil war or by extremism and terrorism. And I think they are also aware that these negative trends will not be just confined to the region. That just as it reached out and hit them in the West in the past, you remember not only 9/11, but the London bombings and the Madrid bombing and in other parts of the world, including India and even Indonesia and so on. So I think they are aware that if such a thing happens again, it will not be limited to this region. It could affect them once again. And I think in their own security interest, they will try to do this. Having said this, we should also understand certain objective limitations. Much of the West is going through its own economic, budgetary, and other crises. These are things, and public opinion is getting affected, by the length of the war in Afghanistan. So these are things that are going to propel things in a direction that just basically reduces their capabilities for some time. At least that's my guess. But on the whole, I still feel that they are right, and the Bonn Conference is the beginning of that, which will be an international pledge for a long-term commitment for Afghanistan.
Yes. Mr. Ambassador, India was invited to the Istanbul conference as well. So what do you think? India will also take part on a Bonn conference?
Yes, absolutely. We are committed
How do
to
you see
participating.
the role of India in these conferences?
I think the role of India in these conferences is like the role of any other country, is to offer ideas and to build a consensus around a viable strategy for the post-2014 stabilization and development of Afghanistan. And we will come with our own ideas on how this should be done.
Yes. Mr. Ambassador, one more thing that most people think that after the killing of Osama bin Laden, the Al-Qaeda leader, Western countries think that they achieved their targets, their goals, their aims against Al-Qaeda. So if they abandon Afghanistan again and they leave Afghanistan, because most people think that they are working on an exit strategy now in Afghanistan. So what is the India concern about the rise of insurgency in these areas?
See, I think there is a temptation very easily to personalize these things. One person may have gone, but the phenomenon of terrorism, the phenomenon of religious extremism that feeds terrorism, the entire, what we can call the infrastructure of terrorism, the schools where a kind of distorted and very narrow and very backward vision of Islam is taught, the indoctrination centers, the explosives factories, all these remain. It's just that maybe we do not have a figure with a photograph and a kind of, let's say, a charisma, an international reputation of bin Laden. But there are many other, shall we say, smaller bin Ladens that are there amongst this phenomena. And the killing of one big Laden doesn't end all that. And probably the feelings that animate that kind of thinking continue. So in some ways, you need to address those, that kind of, that infrastructure and that kind of thinking in order to reverse this trend. Not the killing of one person is not enough.
So the India concern about the raising of the insurgency and extremism, especially in area which is close in a border with Pakistan, Kashmir, for example.
I don't think in Kashmir we have a serious, I don't think it's correct to bring in Kashmir in this at all, because Kashmir is not an issue of really, people may have tried to use religious extremism there, but we do not have a situation where, of this kind of religious extremism. We have always said that there are, of course, we have our own problems. Every country has problems that we have to resolve ourselves. But we have always said that this militancy in Jammu and Kashmir, the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir, has been fed from outside. And just as it's been fed in Afghanistan from outside. And we have always maintained that the best way of addressing this is to stop this kind of externally sponsored militancy and terrorism.
So you have the degree of concern about that,
sir? This season was one of the better seasons for tourism in Jammu and Kashmir. We have an elected government, we have an elected chief minister, a young, dynamic, active chief minister, and we are addressing, we are trying to tackle with the problems of the people there. And we are fairly sure that in our democratic structure and with our kind of sort of political system, we can accommodate, we can address legitimate grievances, and we can accommodate legitimate aspirations of the people. This is not the first time, and Kashmir is not the only area where this has happened. India has faced, India is a multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multilingual. It's for many people, it's almost a miracle that it survives as a nation today. But in fact, it's not just surviving, we are a strong nation today. And we've had this kind of tendencies in the past in different parts. And somehow, whatever it is, our Indian system is capable of absorbing and accommodating and giving them a stake in the nation. And we've done that.
Yeah, Mr. Ambassador, in the past, the Indian embassy in Afghanistan has been attacked, and the Pakistani spy agency ISI was blamed for that attack. So still you feel that type of threat in Afghanistan right now?
At least according to the alerts and messages that we get from time to time from firstly from the Afghan authorities, but also from others and from our own sources, yes, these threats are very much alive, and we are very mindful and alive to them as well.
So do you see these threat as like elements to stop India to helping Afghanistan in other sectors like trade, education, in other sectors as well?
Well, you have to ask yourself, why does this happen? I think it's very clear that the Afghan people don't have a problem with us. There is no objective reason why the Afghan people There is no leftover issue. There is no issue which divides us. So we don't really see this as something that is coming from the hearts of the Afghan people. Somebody probably has some intention of limiting or frightening us from having a normal relationship with Afghanistan. But let us be realistic. India is not a small country with a small population that can be just easily frightened of like this. And we are committed to our friendship.
But you feel, Mr. Ambassador, that the Pakistan role here is important, because if Pakistan cooperate with India, so they can play a great role to rebuild Afghanistan.
Absolutely. And this, I mean, as you know, we have, and particularly our Prime Minister has been making a very consistent effort to improve relations with Pakistan and to end terrorism emanating out of Pakistan. So he has been really working extremely hard in this. There have been ups and downs. We will continue to work hard on improving relations with Pakistan. We have a stake in Pakistan's stability and prosperity. We have a contrary instability in Pakistan will affect us both. So this is in our common interest that Pakistan evolves in a positive direction.
Mr. Ambassador, Afghan people really want to see a better relation between the India and Pakistan, because they will automatically benefit from that. So how can these two countries put aside their differences? Is there any way that they come close together, or at least the differences that they have? Because Afghan people, they're tired of 30 years of conflict, war in Afghanistan, and now they see, because to India, Afghan people have a great degree of respect, friendship towards India. They never see any threat or problem with India. And they want to have a better relation with India and use the India resources to rebuild their countries. So the main problem is Pakistan. So how could India work with Pakistan to resolve their differences and to help rebuild Afghanistan?
See, I think two things. One is, of course, I must observe that very often this sounds more like an India-Pakistan interview than an India-Afghanistan interview. Anyway, however it is, the fact is that we are trying to improve our relations with Pakistan, not just for Afghanistan's sake, but for our own sake. And that's important for us. In the same way as I see that Afghanistan is also trying to improve its relations with Pakistan. Naturally, this is all countries. We would desire improved, normal, healthy relations. If you had such healthy relations, maybe we would not be talking so much about security and things like this. So we don't see any direct connection between this, because frankly for us, India-Pakistan relations, India-Afghanistan relations, they are two separate things. We see them, they can both be positive. This is not an either or zero-sum competitive game, as I said before. So, if our efforts to improve, we have an ongoing dialogue that is going on with Pakistan. Our foreign ministers have met twice in the last year, and they met very recently. Our prime ministers met very recently. So we have a process of trying to address our differences bilaterally. Now, if this has a collateral effect in improving relations in the region and involving Afghanistan, we are all the more happy about that.
Mr. Ambassador, President Karzai's statement about that during his interview with a Pakistani private TV channel, that if India attacked Pakistan, so Afghanistan will stand with Pakistan. How much you think it's had impact over the Indian people or Indian government?
Surprisingly not much. Of course, some people took note of it, but I think people understood that it was a hypothetical question, that the president was suddenly thrown, and he gave a rhetorical answer to that. He knows that he's speaking to a Pakistani audience in that interview, and he's addressing the Pakistani audience. And he also later on explained that what he had in mind was, just as Pakistan, and for that matter Iran, helped Afghanistan during the times of foreign intervention and civil war by accepting refugees. This was the spirit in which he meant. I don't think he meant in terms of going to war with X or Y for the sake of someone else. But I think basically people understood that it was a rhetorical answer to a hypothetical question for a Pakistani audience, which is understandable.
Yeah. Mr. Ambassador, most people in Afghanistan think that since India had a great achievement on education area, so how could India help the Afghan universities to upgrade their curriculums?
Again, I think a very good question. These are ways, how can we do that? Well, curriculum development, we would be very happy to work with the Afghan ministries of both education and higher education in sort of developing and enhancing education standards and curriculum at both the school and the college and university level. So far, I think you're right that not much has happened, and this is definitely something that we have in our agenda. At this moment, I think really we have focused on the scholarships.
Did the Afghan government ask you, or like Afghanistan Higher Education or Ministry of Education ask the Indian government to help to upgrade these curriculums?
I'm not aware of. We have had some overtures from the both the ministries of education and higher education to expand this kind of educational cooperation. But I would say these are at some of the initial stages. We will definitely develop it.
Sir, India have like 1,000 scholarships for young Afghans to get educated in India. Is there any plan to raise that number, sir?
Actually, we've just raised the number. Let me put this in perspective. Until this year, we had between 500 to 600 scholarships. When Prime Minister visited Kabul in May, he actually announced that we will enhance this to about 1,000. So starting from next year, inshallah, we will have about 1,000 scholars, Afghan scholars visiting India. I think this year we had over 600 already, 650 or so. But in addition to these 1,000 scholarships, which are largely in, so to say, the humanities, we have also extended some 300 scholarships in the agricultural sciences, 300 scholarships over a period of 5 years in the agricultural sciences, which we see as one of the main areas of the Afghan economy and one of the main areas to bring, prosperity to the farmers and to the people at large and to build the Afghan economy.
Yes. How much India have the interest to invest on the mines industry in Afghanistan, sir?
Just before I come to that, I also want to mention that in the area of universities, we are working on trying to strengthen and develop the Afghan agricultural universities. So this is one specific area where we are targeting. On the mines, this is largely a commercial area, but Indian mining companies and steel companies, and we hope other companies also, they have noted the mineral potential of Afghanistan, and they have started taking an interest in the economics of investment in Afghanistan. This is a very positive development. As you know, for the Haji Kak iron ore tender, which was opened a few months back, at least 22 Indian companies expressed interest. Finally, those who actually tendered were much less, but that is quite normal. So let's see. This is a bellwether case. This is a test case. If something positive comes out of this, we can expect a very positive response in the Indian business community, in the Indian investment community. If they have one success, they might be encouraged to look at more opportunities in Afghanistan. This is the kind of healthy economic competition that we would like to see in Afghanistan.
Mr. Ambassador, the other area is the health. because in the medical field, India also have a great achievement. So how can the Indian government help Afghanistan as well on that?
Well, okay, we've had some initiatives, and I think one of the things about the strategic partnership agreement is that it is encouraging us to think in bolder, more far-reaching steps. So far, we have of course helped set up the Indira Gandhi Institute for Child Health. We are thinking of strengthening and developing the maternity and kind of neonatal for the sort of newborn babies ward in that hospital. We've had our medical missions. We are now thinking of recasting that to make that sort of more integrated, to provide cooperation in the health area that benefits the Afghan health system directly. We have, through our small development projects, contributed a lot to development buildings of primary health centers and secondary health centers in the provinces. Now, we will continue with that because we have expanded our small development program. So we will continue with our infrastructure development in the health area. But side by side, we are looking at how we can contribute to the software. That means to the training and capacity building, technical as well as professional, in the medical area. Let's say, hospital to hospital kind of relations. I think also in upgradation or refurbishment of the Indira Gandhi Institute. So these are plans. I think, inshallah, in the next 2 years, certainly before 2014, we hope to see some of these plans translated on the ground.
My last question, Mr. Ambassador, how do you see post-2015 Afghanistan?
Post-2015. This is one of those crystal ball questions. And as you know, with every crystal ball, there are many ifs and buts. If the international community remains engaged in Afghanistan, remains engaged politically, from the security point of view, and economically, if the international community remains engaged, if it develops a real end state and a plan to reach that end state, we do not see any reason for despondency or pessimism. My personal belief is that Afghanistan has huge potential. It has agricultural potential, it has mineral potential, and it has human resource potential. And its location, strategic location, also allows it to benefit from a lot of regional trade, transport, energy, and other links. So working in the right direction, which I think the Istanbul conferences, also tried to put together, and the Bonn conferences, Afghanistan can be a success story. And personally, I feel the potential is there to not just be, and I've said this before, not just be a land bridge, but to be actually a country that can provide some of the momentum through its minerals and its agricultural resources and human resource potential, to drive growth in this region in particular. And there, I think the magnet of the Indian economy, both in terms of investments and technological capacities as well as markets, can play a big role.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. My pleasure, Mr. Kakkar. It was very nice to meet you, and once again, my greetings to your
Thank you,
viewership. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.